This is a conference of add-on teams for college football. Over the past couple of seasons of conference realignment, we've seen traditional power teams like Texas, Oklahoma, USC, and even BYU join in with conferences that they've never been associated with. And we've seen less traditional powers like Oregon and Utah do the same thing. And it's left this weird environment where teams are looking to stay alive in modern college football, even though they've been a part of college football for so long, and they found themselves in new and unfamiliar places, and sometimes in places that they are not wanted. But this is all about money, and the quietest massive story that's going on in college football right now is what's going on between the Big Ten and private equity. And essentially, a private equity firm is attempting to buy a media rights allotment, a media rights stake in the Big Ten for $2 billion. And we'll see if that ends up going through. But it shows that private equity is going to be a force in not just college football, but American sports going forward. Private equity is definitely going to have to be involved with the amount of money that we're getting to for teams and conferences and all these kinds of things. So it's made me think, why would a private equity firm not try to find a way to put together enough money to buy a bunch of big name teams out of their conference deals, bring them into a brand new conference with all new media rights, with all new teams, and essentially create a brand new power conference. So today I have $10 billion, and I'm going to do just that. I'm going to pinpoint teams that might want to find a new conference or that have recently moved around and tried to put together a conference that could rival the power of the SEC and the Big Ten. To start, there is one team that I have to have in my conference or it doesn't go forward, and that's Notre Dame. And I know, Notre Dame does not really at the moment have a reason to get into a conference. But here's my pitch to Notre Dame. First off, Notre Dame, how long do you think this NBC deal is going to last with the amount of money they're spending on NBA, the amount of money they're spending on the NFL, the amount of money they're spending on the Big Ten? You are kind of not their biggest fish anymore. NBC Sports has, in a lot of ways, outgrown Notre Dame. Now, they may value you so much for the legacy side of it, but I do not think that that deal is going to continue to grow if you keep giving them the dog shit games that you're giving them. If you're playing Miami on ESPN, and if you're playing Texas A&M on CBS or ABC or wherever else, you don't give them their two biggest games of the season, does it really matter that they have Notre Dame Navy? And that's a big one. Does it really matter that they have Notre Dame Syracuse? Like, there are a bunch of games that you're giving them that are not the same value that you're giving ESPN or you're giving Fox or whoever is playing your biggest games of the season, which are the early non-conference games for the big teams. So that's my one side of the pitch. The other side of the pitch is the college football playoff. Now, this seemed to be a saving grace for you in a time where conferences conglomerate. But I will say the next media rights deal that the SEC and the Big Ten and the college football playoff are going to come to, and the next playoff deal that they're going to come to, is going to lean heavily to the Big Ten and the SEC. If the Big Ten and the SEC decided to keep the conference champion first round bye thing, I don't think that Notre Dame would be as gung-ho about staying independent. But it did not benefit the SEC and the Big Ten as much as they thought it would, and so they got that out of there. Now, the next thing is not going to be a bye. The next thing is not going to be a tie into playoff seeding or anything like that. It's going to be getting into the playoff. Being a part of the SEC, being a part of the Big Ten is going to give you so many more opportunities to be a part of the playoff. I think that Notre Dame is going to find itself fighting, instead of, at this point, for 7 spots, they need 1 of the 7 at-large spots. They're going to find themselves fighting for maybe 2 or 3 at-large spots, with the rest of them being broken off specifically for conferences like the SEC, the Big Ten, and to a lesser degree, the ACC, the Big 12, and an even lesser degree, the G5. So Notre Dame is really going to have a much more difficult path to directly getting in the playoff, which is a huge supplement to their income as an independent team, because they don't have to separate their playoff dues with anybody else. So granted, I get Notre Dame. I then go after 2 West Coast teams. That's USC and UCLA. I know right now they're making tons of money being in the Big Ten, but they're not succeeding as much as they thought they should. Maybe USC will pull it off this year. They definitely have a path to get to the college football playoff. It runs through Eugene, but they have a path to get to the college football playoff. But of course, UCLA is not having the success that they would hope they would. Now, success in their eyes also comes with dollar signs. One thing about the dollar signs they're getting in the Big Ten is they're having to fly to New Jersey. They're having to fly to Wisconsin. They're having to fly to Ohio to play weekly college football games. Now, that is only so sustainable, right? You need to be having college football playoff success. You need to be getting additional income to make that sustainable. And I just don't think, with the way the Big Ten is set up, USC and UCLA are ever going to find that level of success that puts them in the college football playoff as a regular participant. So I think that they would be teams that could be broken off of their major conferences. And of course, having Notre Dame, getting USC in with Notre Dame, a game that very well may be going away because of the amount of money that USC is putting out to travel across the country, not just for football, but basketball, baseball, whatever else they're sponsoring, women's sports, Olympic sports, all these things. It's really going to take a toll on USC. So I think that USC could be convinced, and if USC is convinced, UCLA will be convinced because they're going wherever USC is going. And if I'm going after those two West Coast teams, I'm definitely going to go after Oregon and Washington. I think that these are the easiest power teams that are truly top-level teams, truly top-level as far as success, as well as media rights value that could be pulled away because Oregon and Washington are getting like a 50 to 60% share of their Big Ten revenue at this point, and they won't be getting the full one for another 5 years. So those are the two easiest dominoes to pull away, especially if you get USC and UCLA. I think it makes so much sense financially for Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA to all stay together no matter what going forward because they are the strongest West Coast teams and they need to be able to play each other every single season to mitigate the cost of going across the country for all sports like we're talking about. So now we've got our conglomerate of 5, the 4 West Coast teams and Notre Dame. Now we got to kind of fill in between, and the biggest dogs left on the board that absolutely have to be a part of the Additional Powers Conference is Texas and Oklahoma. Now, I know Texas and Oklahoma fans are going to say, we're happy in the SEC, we want to be here, but they don't fit with what the SEC has. I think that they both have massive games this upcoming weekend that make or break their seasons this year. Of course, Texas had a great season last year. Oklahoma did not have such a great season. Oklahoma is going to really have to perform out of their minds to get a successful season this year, to win out this year, which they needed to get to the college football playoff. And I just think that, even though the SEC has such value, there's a tipping point with these conferences. And like I said, these are going to be the hardest ones to get. But I think the value of joining a conference with USC and Notre Dame and Oregon and UCLA could outweigh the value of the SEC, and also could be an easier path to the playoff for specifically Oklahoma. I think Texas has gotten a little bit of an easier schedule these first 2 seasons. Oklahoma has gotten the worst schedule in the country the last 2 seasons. So more so for Oklahoma. But Texas is eventually going to feel the strength of that SEC conference. And I think that moving to a conference that's a little bit more spread out as far as power might be enticing for both of those teams, especially joining Notre Dame. I think that Notre Dame is the big selling point here. If you can get Texas, USC, Notre Dame, Oklahoma all in the same conference, not to mention Oregon. Oregon is a top 10 media rights deal team across the country. That is a valuable team. I think that the Pac-12 thing falling apart without them expecting it to made them less valuable in realignment negotiations. But Oregon, if you look at the numbers, they are top of the top when it comes to teams that you want in your conference. So there we've got our top 6 teams, the first 6 teams that we absolutely need in the Additional Powers Conference. Now we're going to kind of fill in a little bit. I think obvious next one is BYU. BYU is one of the most valuable teams just because they have a built-in base. Doesn't matter what's happened. They have a built-in base. That is a cross-country base. They travel wherever they go. BYU, especially getting them in a West Coast conference, Oregon, Washington, there's going to be a bunch of BYU fans. I think that is a big add, and they have been very successful in the Big 12. They've been very successful as an independent in the West Coast and the WAC. Whatever they've been in, they have been one of the better teams. Maybe they haven't been in the WAC, but the Mountain West for sure. Oh, they probably were in the WAC before they went in the Mountain West. Whatever. They have been successful across the country. So BYU would be the next add to kind of add in here. Then Utah comes along with BYU. I think that the state of Utah is growing. I think that both of those schools have been growing exponentially over the past couple of seasons. Utah was a very successful Pac-12 team. They've proven to be able to do it at the top level. Both teams are probably going to be right around the top 12 in Tuesday's college football playoff poll. So those are 2 massive adds to continue the growth of the additional powers conference. And then it's Texas Tech. And I think Texas Tech is an interesting one. It's from the point of view of Texas Tech fans, they are already an SEC or a Big Ten level school because of the amount of money they've put in the last couple seasons. But if you just look at the history of Texas Tech, really, it's 2009. Really, it's Mike Leach 2009 when they go 11-1. And even then, I think they lose in the Cotton Bowl. They have 2 Cotton Bowl appearances. They lose both of those appearances. Now, I really like Texas Tech. I really like what they're doing. I have always kind of been interested in Texas Tech. I like red and black. I like the Mike Leach offense. Michael Crabtree was one of my favorite wide receivers in college football, and I liked him with the Niners as well because I hate the Seahawks. But Texas Tech is in the transformation. Speaking as an Oregon fan, if the Pac-12 collapsed in 2011, Oregon gets left behind. Because it happened in 2024 or 2023, Oregon was a part of it. But that's because Oregon went through a 25-year transformation, starting basically right at the end of the Rich Brooks era and continuing to be money being put into the program. Now, by Nike and Phil Knight, and through the Chip Kelly era, and there was downtimes. There was the Helfrich era. There was the Taggart era. Even in a lot of ways, the Cristobal era that helped rebuild the program, but still there was real tough times then, lean times, and the Lanning has got it back to the level and maybe probably past the level of where it was with Chip Kelly. Texas Tech is going to go through that same thing. Now, I think that, for one, the Mike Leach era gave it a little bit of legitimacy, but also the amount of money that you can put into a program now and how much effect that could have in a 1-year span is different nowadays. So Texas Tech might be on an accelerated timeline, but they're still 5-10 years away from being a truly top-level program, but they will get there. They have the investment. Cody Campbell is invested in Texas Tech and college sports in general. I think that Texas Tech will eventually get there. But right now, they are still just a high-level Big 12 team. But it's not just about football. It's about a lot of the other things. And ask Boise State, right? But they've got to still build up before they really are truly there. But even right now, they are a valuable add to the additional powers conference. Okay, and then there's 4 more teams that we want to add. We want to get to 14. We currently have 10. 2 of them are additional former Pac-12 and Big 12 teams. That's Arizona State and Colorado. Arizona State, to a lesser degree, they're not as much of a media darling, but I think that you want to have Arizona in this conference. I think it just makes sense to have an Arizona team. Arizona State would be the one that you would want for football, maybe Arizona more so for basketball, but football is definitely more valuable, and Arizona State is on the rise as a program under Dillingham and in their time in the Big 12. So Arizona State would be the first choice. The other one would be Colorado. Now, Colorado is a little bit more tricky. Now, they are a traditional power. They won a national championship in 1990. Deion Sanders has made them one of the most popular teams in the country. But I haven't really been paying attention to the numbers this year. I will do kind of a wrap-up of the numbers at the end of the season. I think that Colorado has struggled this year with numbers because they don't have Travis Hunter. They don't have a Heisman Trophy. They don't have Shadur Sanders. So they don't have this father-son dynamic thing, and they suck this year. They're getting their ass beaten every single game over the past couple weeks. So Colorado is an interesting one, but I still think that, there was a reason they got added to the Pac-12. There was a reason they were one of the first teams to go back to the Big 12. They have value across their sports, and it's a great location for this conference as well because Colorado, Utah bridge that gap between kind of the central teams and the western teams. Our final 2 are 2 smaller level teams, but I think that they add value as kind of the bottom tier media rights teams, and that's Louisville and TCU. Of course, Louisville more so because of their proximity to Notre Dame and because they have a strong football, they have a strong basketball. Maybe not the strongest, but any given season they could find their way into the top 10 in any of those sports, and I think that they have a pretty good baseball team. Don't quote me on that, but Louisville is a team that you would like in your conference, especially if you have chances for them to play higher name teams. One of the problems with Louisville's media rights right now is they end up getting a lot of their games on the ACC network, which doesn't report to Nielsen, so they don't have these highest level numbers that some of the other teams would have, and they have to play other ACC teams. If they get into the additional powers conference, their numbers are going to shoot up, and people are really going to see, that Louisville is a strong program. They've had a Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, the 2-time MVP is in the league from Louisville. Like that. they have big things going on there. And then TCU, of course, went to the national championship just a few years ago. They're in Dallas. That would be a big add. And 3 Texas teams is a lot, but there's enough to support 3 Texas teams in Texas. Austin, Dallas, and then Lubbock, is kind of its own kind of thing out there in West Texas. So there you have it. The additional powers conference will be Texas, Oregon, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Arizona State, USC, Texas Tech, Washington, Utah, UCLA, Colorado, BYU, Louisville, and TCU. And on the screen, you kind of have the rest of the conference layout after those teams have been picked out. The Big 12 would obviously add 1 or 2 teams. I don't know what they would be, so we're just going to leave them at 10 for now. And then the rest of the conferences there are laid out. Some arguments could be made for Stanford or Cal. Definitely were considered. Nebraska would be considered as well, but I think that they have turned into a Big 10 team over the past 15 years. Texas A&M was an idea. When I originally did this video a couple months back, it was a little bit different, but the same kind of idea. Sans the private equity portion of it. But Texas A&M was in there to join back with Texas. But I think, again, they have morphed into an SEC team along with Missouri into the SEC. And then the Big 12 is just kind of, the rest of those teams don't necessarily make as much sense as everybody else. The argument to not have would be, obviously, Louisville and TCU would be the ones to replace if you were going to replace them. But I think those are the teams. But, let me know what you think, if there should be other teams in there aside from Louisville or TCU. But thanks for watching that video. Make sure that you like and subscribe and hype the video. It helps small content creators. I'm a small content creator, and I could use all the help I can get. And if you made it this far, leave a comment and let me know what you think. I know that this is probably not the most realistic thing to happen. I don't think it will happen, but it's a fun idea to go along with the private equity. But let me know if you think this is at all realistic. And if it is, what teams would you swap in? What teams would you swap out? And what would other conferences do in kind of reaction to this? Would more teams be added to the SEC, the Big 10, or the ACC, even the Big 12 in reaction to the additional powers conference? If you want to watch more of my videos, I do have those for you. Over here, I've got my first Buck rating. It's a BCS plus college football playoff rating system that we started last week. We will do another one on Wednesday, so check that one out if you're interested. Up here, I've got one of my most popular videos, which is what college football would look like in 2030. Check that one out. Other than that, I've got my subscribe link on this side, and we'll check you next time. See ya!